So members of the committee, just bear with us a moment. I see 4 members present at the moment. Chair Medeiros, Deputy Chair Fortini, and remotely I see Councillor Santos and Councillor Vicente. Just need to confirm if there's 2 more members present before.
Sorry? Yeah. So I'll reverse it. So you asked to reverse the order. We still don't have no quorum?
Members of committee, just before we get started, I see 5 members present. We do require 6 for quorum. So present in the chambers is Chair Medeiros, Vice Chair Fortini, Councillor Alessi, and participating remotely is Councillor Santos and Councillor Vicente. So we're just going to wait a moment for another member to join to ensure we have quorum to proceed. And we do have until 7:30 to ensure that we can achieve quorum.
They said they were going online.
They're not on?
Well, Councillor Bowman, I imagine, would be home before Woodlands.
Everyone's texting. I didn't know that I delete them all. I could have stayed in another one.
Councillor Willens has joined. So if Councillor Fortini takes a seat, we can start the meeting.
Can you hear me okay, Peter?
Yes, Councillor Willens, thank you.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. As we begin today's meeting, we'd like to acknowledge that we are gathering here today on the treaty territory of the Mississaugas of Credit First Nation, before them the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Wendat, and we also acknowledge that many First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and other global Indigenous people that now call Brampton their home. We are honored to live, work, and enjoy the land. Good evening. Welcome to our meeting of Brampton's Planning and Development Committee. I will begin the meeting with the City Clerk calling the roll for attendance at tonight's meeting.
Members of committee, I will call your name. Please indicate your presence. Councillor Dillon. I don't see present at the moment. Councillor Singh. I don't see present at the moment. Councillor Fortini is present in person. Councillor Bowman.
Present.
Councillor Paleshi is present in person. Councillor Willens.
Present, Peter.
Councillor Vasante.
Present.
Present. Councillor Santos.
Present.
And Chair Medeiros is present. You have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Our next item is approval of the agenda. Do any members wish to add a business item at tonight's meeting?
If not, Mr. Chair, just a few updates with the revised agenda. So item 5.1 is statutory public notice item, and delegation 6.1. There was a mistake in identifying the planning application number. It should be 2022-0029, not 2029. Also, we have added delegation 6.2. This is a delegation from Stefania Lipa, and this is in regards to statutory public notice item 5.2 on today's agenda. We also have added correspondence, which will be identified as number 6 from Sukhpal Singh, Brampton resident, regarding item 5.2, and that's listed under 11.1 on the agenda. And finally, we have additional correspondence from Build, and that is identified on the revised agenda as 11.2, and this is in regard to the community benefits charges, presentation and staff report 7.3 and 7.4 on tonight's agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. As I see there are no speakers, I'll move that Councillor Fortini moves the motion to approve the agenda. Is there anyone opposed? I see none. Motion carries. Our next item, do any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered in today's agenda? Okay, the clerk will so note for the meeting minutes. Our next is consent motion. I'll start reading the relevant agenda items, and members can identify any items to be held for debate. The first two are statutory public meetings, so they can't be held. Staff presentation regarding presentation, senior policy and project lead for regarding official plan and growth management implementation of housing catalyst capital project. Okay, so they'll be held as well. Okay, so item 7.5, staff report, supplementary report applications to amend the official plan in the Main Street North Development Permit System Bylaw, SGL, Planning and Design Incorporated. In consent, minutes 5.1, Cycling Advisory Committee, August 18th. In consent, item 8.2, minutes Brampton Heritage Board, August 31st. In consent, so that's a staff report. Item 10.1 is the staff report. Item 10.2, correspondence regarding unlimited height and density. In consent. And item 11.1, correspondence regarding application of zoning bylaw and draft plan subdivision. 7 developments incorporated, Ward 9.
So 3,
Oh,
Mr.
but it's
Chair.
related to the statutory public meeting. Okay.
To hold,
So all,
unlimited height. That's not what I appreciate.
okay, the unlimited height and density correspondence, but it's correspondence.
There is
Yeah.
a staff report as well, 10.1.
Yeah,
Because there is a staff.
yeah. So you're held, but I think it's held anyways. Yeah. So I'll hand it over to you, Peter, to
So through you, Mr. Chair, there's potentially 3 items for consent. 7.5, which is the staff report on citywide community improvement plan for office employment. 8.1, minutes cycling advisory, committee of August 18th. 8.2, minutes Brampton Heritage Board of August 31st. With the balance being held or part of statutory public notice items or staff presentations. So in accordance with the council's resolution, the consent motion will be through recorded vote. All those in favor or opposed to the consent motion, please indicate. Councillor Dillon? Don't see his joint.
In favor. In favor.
Thank you. Councillor Singh? I don't see in the meeting. Councillor Fortini? In favor. Councillor Bowman?
Yes.
Councillor Paleshi? In favor. Councillor Willens?
Yes.
Councillor Vasante?
Yes.
Councillor Santos?
Yes.
Chair Medeiros?
Yes.
That carries unanimously.
Okay, now we go on to our statutory public meetings, and our first item is item 5.1. It's the application to amend the zoning bylaw, permit the development of a 79,019 square meter industrial warehouse consisting of 2 buildings, Ward 10. So I'll hand it over to Emma DeMello, our planner, for a presentation.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to City Clerk. Peter, I just want to advise that as per the order of the agenda and item 5.1 just referenced, within the presentation, I'm seeing here confirmation of it, that the orders are actually reversed. So the item 5.1 as per the agenda here is actually listed as 5.2 on the slides.
So
We'll just advance to 5.2 and do that one first.
That would be
because it's
fine.
listed in agenda. Yeah, right there.
Good evening, Chairman Medeiros, members of council, city staff, and members of the public. My name is Emma DeMello, and I'm the planner assigned to process and review the subject application. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information to the public on the application filed by Buzzfields Inc. on behalf of Countryside Brand East Holdings LP. Next slide, please. The subject property is located in Ward 10 on lands located east of Clarkway Drive and north of Countryside Drive, and the property is municipally known as 0 and 5200 Countryside Drive. Next slide, please. This is an air photo of the site as related to Clarkway Drive and Countryside Drive. The property is bordered by agricultural uses to the north, east, south, and west, and a valley land and woodland system is located to the west of the subject lands. Countryside Drive is a minor arterial road, and Clarkway Drive is a collector road. The lands to the east are planned for future prestige industrial uses, and the lands directly south of the property are planned for future low-density residential uses in the secondary plan, and a new north to south major arterial road is planned near the eastern property line. Next slide, please. The images shown on the slide here are a street view of the lands looking north from Countryside Drive. The lands are currently used for agricultural purposes and are planted with row crops, and there is an existing residential dwelling and telecommunication tower on the property which are to be removed. Next slide, please. The proposed rezoning application contemplates 2 industrial warehouse buildings. Building A is a proposed 1-story industrial warehouse building with 35,826 square meters of floor area and 62 truck loading spaces located at the rear of the building. Building B is a proposed 1-story industrial warehouse building with 43,194 square meters of floor area and 112 truck loading spaces located at the front and rear of the building. And the buildings would have a site coverage of approximately 48%. The site would be accessed from Countryside Drive via 2 driveways, including an all-directional access up the west side of the site, aligned with a future planned collector road to the south, and a right-in, right-out access at the east end of the subject site. Next slide, please. The images seen on this slide are the renderings and elevations submitted by the applicant. The image on the top left shows the proposed warehouse buildings on the site in relation to Countryside Drive and the future arterial road. The elevations have been articulated with 5 vertical and horizontal elements to break up the building facade, and the main entrances are clearly defined by use of distinct colored elements. Next slide, please. Lines are designated industrial, open space, and special study area on Schedule A of the official plan, and an amendment to the official plan is not required to permit the proposed development. Next slide, please. The lands are designated Prestige Industrial and Valley Land in the Highway 427 Industrial Secondary Plan. An amendment to the secondary plan is not required to permit the proposed development. Next slide, please. The lands are zoned agricultural, which permits agricultural uses and single detached dwellings and group homes. An amendment to the zoning bylaw is required to permit the proposal. Next slide, please. The applicant is proposing to amend the property from the agricultural zone to a special section within the industrial M4 zone. The section proposes that the zone only be used for warehouse uses, and site-specific provisions will be included in the zoning amendment upon further review of the application. Next slide, please. The subject application will be reviewed for consistency with various planning tools, including the Planning Act, the Provincial Policy Statement, the Growth Plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, Region of Peel and City of Brampton official plans, and the Highway 427 Industrial Secondary Plan. Next slide, please. Issues and opportunities identified to date include that the landscape buffers along Countryside Drive appropriately screen the industrial use from future and current residential uses to the south of the properties, that the environmental feature at the northwest corner of the site is appropriately restored and protected from industrial uses on the site, that the tertiary plan ensures the comprehensive development of the subject lands and the surrounding properties, and considers elements such as the relationship of the subject properties and surrounding lands to the planned major arterial road, and appropriate management of stormwater on the site to reduce environmental impacts of the proposed development on the adjacent natural heritage system. Next slide, please. This application was deemed to be complete as of June 30th, 2022, and was circulated to commenting departments and agencies on July 5th. Public notice of this meeting was issued on August 12th. And the next steps in this application are that staff will continue to review the application, including reviewing comments from the public and technical comments. Issues raised will be addressed in the recommendation report, and staff will advance a final recommendation report to council for a decision. And staff will contact and follow up with any residents who have spoken, written in, or advised an interest in monitoring the proposal. Next slide, please. The report associated with tonight's meeting is available online, and the presentation will be available online shortly. The final recommendation report will be posted on the city's website in advance of the future meeting. And once again, my name is Emma Tomello, and my contact information is posted here, along with the contact information for the applicant, Ms. Sana Ahmed and Mr. Mike Bizzett of Bousfields, Inc. Mr. Bizzett and Ms. Ahmed are present this evening and available should committee members have any questions regarding the proposal. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation for the evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. City Clerk, do we have any delegations?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we have Michael Bissett on behalf of the applicant here to delegate and make a brief presentation. And Michael, you are in the session. We see your video is on. We're just going to bring up your presentation momentarily.
Thank you very much. Good evening to the chair. I'll just take the opportunity to introduce myself while you bring that up. My name is Mike Bizzett with Bousfields, the planning consultant for the applicant. I think Emma's done a great job of summarizing, so you'll see my presentation is quite brief. A few slides. I'm going to try and provide just a little bit more detail on certain things. You can go to the next slide. This is just a cover page. Thank you. Okay, so this slide just indicates some of the main items that I wanted to get across tonight. The primary purpose of the application is to implement the Highway 427 Industrial Secondary Plan. As you know, there was a quite a lengthy process of bringing forward that secondary plan. It's now in force as it relates to this property. So the objective is to rezone the property from its agricultural zoning to implement the secondary plan with an industrial zoning. By doing that, achieving some of the objectives as stated in terms of economic development, providing for new modern warehousing facility, which would create new jobs, and providing the prestige industrial uses that are envisioned by the secondary plan. Part of what we've been looking to do and what's been noted in the report by staff is ensure there's buffering and screening along the street edges. Also looking to protect the natural feature, which Emma had pointed out, sort of. I'll get into more detail. The northwest corner into a sort of floodplain zone, an appropriate zone for that area, and also to provide a design that ensures that future development on adjacent sites, along with accesses and options for those sites and this site to a future arterial. You can see that on the screen in that aerial. That proposed arterial isn't there now, but it will be in the future. It's a planned street as through the secondary plan. Next slide. This is just an image of the secondary plan just to highlight some of the elements that were discussed. So the northwest corner is the area where the property abuts that natural heritage feature. So we've sort of brought in that paved area so that we wouldn't impact that area. Also in that area are some outdoor amenity areas for the employees. All the loading for the site, the truck areas are internalized so that they're away from the public street edge. Both from the adjacent arterial to the east as well, proposed arterial to the east as well as the countryside. So we've looked at ensuring that the stormwater is maintained to sort of pre-development flows, providing for appropriate quality and quantity control measures. Obviously, that's all to be reviewed by staff in detail. Looking at providing LEED certified buildings and site design. And at the bottom of your screen toward Countryside Drive, we've got the landscape buffer, and sort of that's where we have the street edge and street facing facades, where part of that portion of that would be along Countryside adjacent to future residential to the south, which would be townhouses, but primarily the most of it would be industrial to the south, but still want to provide that landscape buffer along the south edge. Next slide. And this just indicates some photos of the type of facades that we're looking at, examples of sort of high quality design facing countryside. Indicated here are also some internal pedestrian connections, so like pedestrian flow through here, and landscape buffering as well, and buffering along Countryside Drive in terms of screening and providing for that comfortable street edge condition. You can see a signal. There's one signalized access that will be placed on Countryside Drive on the west side of the site, and then another access on the eastern portion of the site. Next slide. And part of what we looked at and what staff wanted to review is what protection of the natural feature. You can see that in the top right or left corner, northwest corner of the site, as well as for allowing development around the site, and providing for accesses. And then what we had done was a tertiary plan. It's hard to kind of get into detail on it, but staff has this and they're reviewing it, and just shows that the proposal does allow for future development of adjacent lands and allows for actually access through potentially through the site and to the arterials and to Countryside Drive as well. And so this provides for some conceptual potential development that could occur on adjacent sites. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation, and thank you for your time, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And as there are no questions, members of the committee, are there any questions or clarification?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just going to ask if there's anybody in the audience that wishes to come forward to speak on this item. There are no other registered delegates, and seeing none, Mr. Chair.
Thank.
Sorry, we do have somebody who we send a link to.
Okay, so as I see none, are any of the councillors from Ward 9 and 10 on?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe Councillor Dillon is present. I
Okay,
don't see
so
Councillor
Councillor Dillon will move the report and approve the staff and receive the correspondence. Is there anyone opposed? I see none. Motion carries. We now go on to item 5.2, which is application to amend the zoning bylaw to permit 26 freehold residential dwellings. And I will hand it over to Alex Sepe, our planner for the city.
Good evening, Chair Medeiros and members of the Planning and Development Committee, staff, and any citizens in attendance. My name is Alex Seppi. I'm the planner assigned to review and process the subject application, which is OZS 2022-0031. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information to the public and seek feedback on the application filed by Blackthorn Development Corp. On behalf of 7 Developments Incorporated. So the subject property is located in Ward 9. It's municipally known as 10378 Torbram Road, which is located in the eastern portion of Brampton. The nearest major intersection would be Torbram Road and Steeplebush Avenue, and the subject property is located at the northwest corner of those intersections. So on screen you can see the surrounding land uses. To the north, there's single detached homes. There's a Stephen Lewin Trail, Sandalwood Heights Secondary School, and Torbram Sandalwood Cricket Ground, as well as a commercial plaza and institutional uses north of Sandalwood Parkway East. To the east, there's single detached residential homes. Stephen Lewin Trail also extends further east. There's also the Robert J. Lee Public School and Caravan Park. To the south, so just south of Steeplebush, you'll see a commercial plaza, which includes a grocery store, convenience store, pharmacy, dentist office, and single detached residential homes further south of that, as well somewhat to the west. And to the west, you'll see the further extension of single detached residential homes. So through my review of the application, I did conduct a site visit. You'll see some imagery from my site visit on screen. So the first image, which is the top left corner, that's the eastward view from Silk Top Trail. And that would be where the proposed entrance would be to the draft plan of subdivision. The second picture just to the right, you'll see number 2 in the bottom left corner. That's the westward view. So that shows the driveway that's currently existing as well as the existing shed that's to be demolished. The third image would be the southward view of the existing site. So it's currently just a vacant field. And then there is trees surrounding the perimeter of the subject property. The fourth, which is in the bottom right corner, that shows the existing residential home that's to be demolished, as well as the existing shed, which will also be demolished. So the applicant's proposal consists of a zoning bylaw amendment and a draft plan of subdivision. A site plan application has also been filed for the proposed development. So currently the subject property is zoned agricultural A through City of Brampton bylaw. An amendment would be required to the zoning bylaw in order to permit the proposed development. So the application itself, it proposes 26 freehold residential dwellings, 24 of which would be semi-detached dwellings, and 2 would be single detached dwellings, which are shown on the plan above. An amenity block with an area of 285 square meters is proposed. There will be external works taking place in order to complete the Silk Top Trail cul-de-sac. This would create a permanent cul-de-sac for vehicular access to the site. Within the site itself, you'll also see pedestrian access and the sidewalk that will be extended from Silk Top Trail along Private Street A. The site plan will create Private Street A and Private Street B. A portion of the Silk Top Trail cul-de-sac and Private Street A are located with the existing Transcanada pipeline easement. More information is available on that later on in my presentation. Next slide, please. So on screen, you'll see a screenshot from the City of Brampton Official Plan Schedule A, which is the General Land Use Designation Schedule. The property is designated as residential. The proposed use is permitted as of right through the residential designation, so an amendment to the official plan is not required. And this is an excerpt from the Springdale Secondary Plan SPA2. The subject property is sub-designated low-density residential on Schedule 2 of the Springdale Secondary Plan. An amendment to the secondary plan is not required to permit the proposed development. And on screen now, you'll see the zoning bylaw for the site. So it's currently zoned agricultural through City of Brampton Bylaw 270/2004 as amended. So the agricultural zone, it permits predominantly agricultural uses, but non-agricultural uses are permitted, such as a single detached home, supporting housing residences type 1 and 2, cemetery, animal hospital, kennel, and a home occupation. To permit the proposed use, a zoning bylaw amendment would be required. So through the development application, the applicant did provide a draft zoning bylaw. What this would do is rezone the property from its current agricultural A zone to a site-specific residential semi-detached zone, which would reflect the proposed development. So on screen, you'll see some of the performance standards that would be proposed through this residential semi-detached zone. So there'll be a change to the minimum lot area of 340 square meters for semi-detached, 170 square meters for semi-detached units. Minimum lot width of 15 meters per semi-detached lot and 7.5 per semi-detached dwelling unit. Minimum lot depths of 21 meters. Minimum front yard depths of 3.5 meters. Minimum rear yard depths of 6 meters per semi-detached dwelling unit. Minimum landscape open space of 40% of the minimum front yard area of an interior lot and 35% minimum front yard area of a corner lot, and a minimum of 6 visitor parking spaces. Next slide, please. So prior to finalizing recommendations to council, this application will be further evaluated for consistency with the Planning Act, the Provincial Policy Statement, Growth Plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, the Region Appeal Official Plan, City of Brampton Official Plan, Springdale Secondary Plan, and the Brampton 2040 Vision. Next slide, please. So on screen, you'll see a view. This is from the southwest corner of Steeplebush Avenue and Torbram Road. There's two main site-specific considerations right now that the city is reviewing, as well as our external review partners. So the first is the Transcanada pipeline easement. So that's located just south of the site, abutting Steeplebush Trail, and just east of the cul-de-sac that you'll see on screen right now. So the Transcanada pipeline easement, it's a high pressure, well, within the easement, sorry, there's a high pressure natural gas pipeline, which is abutting the subject lands. It's located south of the subject parcel. So the TCPL, which is the Transcanada Pipeline Limited, provided draft conditions of approval and comments for the draft plan of subdivision, zoning bylaw amendment, and the site plan application. The city, along with the applicant and owner, will continue to work with TCPL to ensure all requirements are satisfied prior to approval. The second site-specific consideration is the construction of the Silk Top Trail cul-de-sac. What you see on screen right now is the incomplete Silk Top Trail cul-de-sac. So an external works project will be undertaken to create a permanent cul-de-sac at Silk Top Trail. This would provide vehicular connection from Silk Top Trail to the private roadway at the proposed development. These issues and others that are raised will be addressed in a future recommendation report. Next slide, please. So the next steps in this application. So notice of complete application. This was deemed complete on July 5th, 2022. It was circulated to departments and agencies for review and comment. The notice of public meeting was provided on July 29th, 2022. And we are currently at the public meeting right now. So staff will continue to review the application, including reviewing comments from the public and technical comments or technical review comments. We will advance a final recommendation report to council for a decision. Issues raised will be addressed in the recommendation report. Staff will contact and follow up with those residents who have spoken, written in, or advised of interest in monitoring this proposal. Great. So the report associated with tonight's meeting will be available online. The presentation will also be available online. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself, my manager, or the applicant. So, once again, my name is Alex Seppi. I'm the reviewing planner on the file. The applicant information, the applicant is Maurizio Regato from Blackthorn Development Corp. And his email is also posted on the screen right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
Good evening. So through you, Mr. Chair, we do have the added delegation of Stefania Lipa. Stefania, you are
Yes, hi.
unmuted. Please go ahead. You have up to 5 minutes to address the committee.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I want to say good evening to everyone. I have lived at 33 Mintleaf Boulevard, which is about a 3-minute walk from this planned development. And I am also a volunteer green space cleaner. I love the Stephen Llewellyn Trail. I walk it every day and enjoy it. I go out into the community. I've been living here, like I said, since the home was built. And it's my family's home, and I've enjoyed this area for the peace and quiet. However, I was wondering as well with the City of Brampton Planning and Development, ever since in this area of Springdale that we have been renting out basements, I have noticed from 1999 that I started living here, an increased traffic flow all over the area, and many more dangers with, the amount of speed demons out there just driving around. And so I'm very concerned about this corner. So I decided to write up a petition. Now, on my petition, it sounds something like this. I, Stephanie Lipa, have compiled this petition to oppose the building of the semi-detached 24 quantity of condo unit. This will bring an income of over 40 new cars, just an estimate that I tried to make up myself here, just thinking of 24 semi-units. And it's already a very traffic-laden intersection, and I do have to bring my 81-year-old mom to different appointments. And so what I did was go out and ask different people in the neighborhood what they thought. And I have compiled a list of 15 different names with their addresses and their contact information that are opposing this. Now, one particular man, his name is Eric Vucinic. He lives at 34 Silktop Trail, and that's the cul-de-sac that Mr. Alex Seppi was talking about. But instead of just talk about that there is a gas pipeline under there, what I did, I went and I tried to learn who the person who lives there is. And that's the difference between speaking with the 7 Developments, Inc. and Alex Seppi and whoever else is involved. There's definitely a monetary value there, but I'm coming from, sorry about my throat, the side of saying, well, I've lived here for 22 years, I've gotten to know people, and I come from the side of, I want to know what you feel. Just like the paper that Brampton sent out that says, let's connect. I wanted to connect to homeowners, taxpayers who deserve our respect in knowing what do you want to happen to this land. And I think we should listen to them. Now, this particular man who lives at 34 Silktop Trail at that cul-de-sac, he's also going through very severe illness right now, and that's going to be a lot of stress for him to see. Now, not only is he opposed to that as well, that happening, now we all spoke about it, and I also went to another home that would be affected, like, very personally, and that was the home of Teresa and Maine Pili with their children, I guess, Anika and David Siva, and they're at 10400 Torbram Road. So I went out and I took it from a perspective of, I want to know what you feel. You are Brampton taxpayers. They have lived over 20 years in that area, and they're opposed to this. So if they're opposed to this, then we have to open our ears as as I would say the 7 Developments, Inc. has to open their ears and, really come from the heart and say, if these are the people that are paying taxes and they're good citizens, we have to listen to them. I also wrote a letter to the city, and I'll just read it because I only see that I have 50 seconds left. This was I am opposed to this coming to our quiet, peaceful community. We are taxpayers. We should be listened to. This building project would bring the stress of construction, noise pollution to residents who are battling illnesses of all kinds. They want peace and not disruption. We do not want 24 semis that will bring an estimated 100 plus more people to that corner and an estimated 200 plus more cars to congest an already congested area that has to have some kind of a traffic survey done anyway, because I don't think it's been done. I'm not sure. Since the dwellings here have been rented out, like I had previously said, there has been more traffic there, and I just am extremely against this being built. I don't think I would mind single dwelling homes, but I do think that the 24 that's being proposed is way too much, for that area to digest.
Okay.
Thank you, Stefania. If you do have a petition, you can file it with the city clerk's office, and we can make sure it's provided to the planners in assessing this application. Mr. Chair, I'm just going to look out to the audience to see if there's anybody else who wishes to speak on this item, and there's nobody present, and we do have correspondence under 11.1 related to this item for committee's consideration.
Okay, thank you. Are there any members of the committee with any questions of clarification? I don't see any, so I have a motion moved by Councillor Dillon to approve the staff report recommendations and receive the correspondence. Anyone opposed? I see none. Motion carries. Public delegations we dealt with. Our next is a staff presentation regarding implementation of a Housing Catalyst Capital Project. So I'll hand it over to Manduparna and Bindu.
Hi, good evening, Chairman Medeiros, members of the Council, city staff, and members of the public. My name is Madhu Devnath. I'm a policy planner in Planning, Building, and Growth Management Department. I'm here today with Bindu Shah, Acting Manager of Official Plan and Growth Management, and Andrew McNeil, Acting Director of City Planning and Design. We are here to provide a presentation on Housing Catalyst Capital Project that accompanies Staff Report Item 7.2 on today's meeting agenda. Next, please. Brampton Comprehensive Housing Strategy and Action Plan Housing Brampton, endorsed in May 2021, aims to improve housing affordability, add more diverse types of housing to the city's housing stock, and use innovative approaches to address housing needs. The Housing Catalyst Capital Project is a deliverable of Housing Brampton. It is designed to incentivize new housing options in Brampton by dispersing grants to private non-profits that can deliver new housing ideas or projects that the city identifies as pilot ideas. The city benefits as it can use the pilots to establish innovative policy and other mechanisms. Next, please. A 2021 budget amendment approved by Council dedicated $4 million for Phase 1 of the project. 4 pilot ideas were proposed for Phase 1 that align with the intent of recent provincial initiatives in housing. Next, please. The Phase 1 of the capital project called for applications through expression of interest with a defined project selection criteria. A selection committee comprised of external housing experts and internal senior leadership reviewed 4 complete and qualified applications in detail and recommended appropriate allocation for each of the 4 proponents. We are seeking Council approval to disperse funding to the proponents. Next, please. Home Opportunities is a non-profit corporation that coordinates the development and marketing of affordable home ownership projects across Ontario. Financial grant of $1 million to them will result in affordable home ownership options for over 100 families subject to site plan approval. The requested grant will create a revolving seed capital and down payment assistance pool that will lead to the production of hundreds of low-income ownership opportunities every year in Brampton. The project falls under the Affordable Home Ownership Solutions pilot idea. Next, please. The second proponent is Golden Age Village for the Elderly. A grant of $1.5 million to them will assist in creating 99 independent, affordable single-room occupancy rental units for seniors and persons with development disabilities within a fully integrated campus of care. While the focus of the residence will be for Vietnamese seniors, it will be available to all members of the wider community. The proposed project would fall under the single-room occupancy housing pilot idea. Next slide, please. The next proposal is by Sheridan College in collaboration with Algoma University and other institutional and community partners. Financial grant of $150,000 will assist them to retain the services of consultants on a cost-sharing basis to undertake a detailed student housing option analysis and an innovative student housing business case and design for Sheridan on-campus as well as off-campus housing where a site exists. The pilot idea is single-room occupancy housing. Next, please. Indus Community Services has partnered with 4 local non-profit agencies in the proposal to create affordable housing units with design flexibility to accommodate a range of housing needs. Once the proponent acquires a site, preferably in major transit station areas, the $1 million requested funding will be utilized for background studies, costing, engagement work, and preliminary architectural drawings leading to planning approval. Pilot ideas are single-room occupancy housing and flexible and incremental housing forms. Next, please. With council direction, staff will work with legal to prepare memorandums of understanding and contribution agreements with each of the 4 proponents. It will be ensured that the grant is dispersed in accordance with the executed agreements, which will set out milestones that the proponent will need to meet prior to receiving the respective grant. Staff will utilize the experience and lessons learned from Phase 1 to further refine the expression of interest in future phases of the Catalyst project and continue to support housing innovation and housing equity by non-profit sectors in Brampton. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there, I guess, before we go to questions, if City Clerk, if you can clarify, because I think as we're in lame duck, for lack of a better term, there is a specific request for funding over the authorized amount that council can approve.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I did check the report on this, and it did say in the financial implications that this was within an approved budget, and therein it would be appropriate for council to make that, or committee to make the recommendation tonight, and council to make the decision later on. But I'll look to planning to confirm. Oh, Andrew, can you just confirm this is within an approved budget that's already been established by council? Is that correct?
Yes, thanks, Peter, and through the chair, that is correct. This is an approved budget. It was approved in the 2022 budget.
Perfect. Okay. Don't see any members of committee. I think I have a motion moved by Councillor Fortini to move the staff presentation and give direction in the staff report. Is there anyone opposed? I see none. Motion carries. Our next is a presentation regarding community benefits charge strategy and bylaw.
Hi, good evening, Chairman Medeiros, members of the council, city staff, and members of the public. It's Madhu Debnath again. I'm a policy planner in planning, building, and growth management. Here today with Bindu Shah, Acting Manager of Official Plan and Growth Management, and Andrew McNeil, Acting Director of City Planning and Design. We are here today to provide a presentation on Community Benefits Charges Study, along with a consultant, Andrew Mirabella from Hemsen Consulting Limited. The Community Benefits Charge, or CBC, once approved, will enable the city to apply a growth-related charge across a broad range of mid to high-density residential developments. This presentation accompanies staff report as item 7.4 on today's meeting agenda. Next, please. A community benefits charge is a new growth funding tool that authorizes a municipality to collect CBCs against land to pay for the capital cost of facilities and services required as a result of development or redevelopment. The CBC replaced the former Section 37 height and density bonusing provisions in the Planning Act. It is an additional revenue source for the city, just like development services and parkland levies. Next, please. CBCs can help city fund a wide range of growth-related capital projects, provided those costs are not already recovered from DCs and parkland levies. the city retained consulting firm Henson Consulting Limited to undertake the community benefits charge assessment, strategy and bylaw for Brampton. Over to Andrew Mirabella from Henson Consulting Limited to continue with the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Madhu. Good evening, members of council and committee. Just to continue on, we're here with slide 3 for the consultation for the CBC regime in Brampton. Obviously, we've had a fairly informative consultation program. We had 2 formal meetings with the Building Industry and Land Development Association, both in June and July. We did have a council workshop on June 27th of 2022 to review the preliminary results and capital programs that we are looking to in this particular CBC strategy. Once the report was completed and the bylaw was posted on the municipal website, for public review and comment in August, and the draft strategy and the bylaw was directly provided to Build for their input and consultation. And through that dialogue, we've addressed some of their concerns with the bylaw itself, which is part of the correspondence package that you have before you today, with a letter from Build on that specific item. If we go to the next slide, just to kind of go through what we're in terms of our rate itself, the proposed CBC application in Brampton, it's going to be levied as a percentage of land value, and it's fixed at 4% of the land valuation. That 4% is a percentage that's prescribed by the province, and it is the maximum permissible percentage that the city can levy. It's going to be applied on all residential development with 5 or more stories and 10 or more units. So there is a prescription in terms of what type of residential development will qualify, and it is that medium to high density developments that would be attract the CBC chart. So any low density developments, single family units and townhomes, they would not qualify. So it would be more your apartment buildings that are going to be looking at to get the CBC. There is a list of exemptions from the payment of CBCs, most of which on here are prescribed by legislation itself. All the way through from long-term care and the addition of kind of the homes for special care and not-for-profit housing, which is included in the list here in the application of the CBC. Those developments, even if they are meeting that criteria, they would not pay a CBC. They're exempt from the payment of it. So we move to the next slide, just to go through the quantum of the capital program. City staff in Henson really took a pretty detailed look at the plan and made some modifications following our council workshop, but it really was a comprehensive review, including many different divisions from planning, building and growth management, community services, corporate support services, public works and engineering were all involved in the development of the program. I won't go through the entire project list and service here. That's all outlined in the study itself. In addition, it's a very similar list to what we had presented at the council workshop back in June. But just highlighting that the gross program totals about $310 million. What we have here on the right side is our CBC related costs, which is $22.5 million, and there's obviously a disparity between the gross cost and the CBC related cost. There's a series of reductions that we have to make, similar to like a development charge study where we have to look at benefit to existing, funding from other growth funding tools, and then we also have to take an adjustment for any share of cost that's going to be benefiting development of other forms such as singles and semis, rows and non-residential. So there's a very good quantification here of what's related to high density type development, and that's how we get to that $22.5 million. Some light items are more suited towards high density developments than others, but generally speaking we had to go through that process of identifying what is CBC eligible and which ones aren't, and what relationship there is to those medium to high density development forms, and that's how we got to our $22.5 million, and that's what gets rolled into the calculation of the rate to determine that the 4% is the eligible amount that can be captured under the strategy. So we just go to the next slide. Just to kind of really cap off on next steps, and I do apologize, I know we're on a 5-minute limit, so I did kind of have to go through that fairly quickly, but generally speaking here, the next steps here is council's approval of the CBC strategy itself. There's the renaming of the existing reserve funds to the Community Benefit Reserve Fund so that city council and city staff can use those reserve funds next year going forward to fund those community benefit type projects that are going to be collected for under this new strategy, under this new regime. The adoption of the CBC bylaw is anticipated. I believe now it is going to be on today's meeting agenda rather than Wednesdays. The CBC bylaw will be applicable to all eligible building permits issued after the adoption of the bylaw. And the council's review of the CBC bylaw would have to take place within 5 years of the date it's first passed, and then every 5 years after the previous resolution was passed. So we just have to ensure that the CBC bylaw stands in its form, and the 4%, if there's no change to that under the legislation or the regulation, that can continue to be levied. So that'll have to be done in due time within the next 5 years to ensure that we can continue collecting under this bylaw and under this regime. So that kind of concludes both Madhu's and I's presentation, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from members of committee? Okay, I see none, so I do have a motion moved by Councillor Palashi to approve the staff report. And
through you, Mr. Chair, it would also be receiving the presentation and receiving the added correspondence 11.2 from Bill.
okay, as noted by the city clerk, is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is 7.6 and
through you, Mr. Chair. The next item would be 10.1, the
yes.
third item on unlimited height and density. There's a staff report, 10.1, and then correspondence from the region appeal is 10.2.
Okay, so I will hand it over to, I believe, who's from staff presenting? I
think Andrew may be speaking to this.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Medeiros. The one item I wanted to mention is that the report was deferred. We have made some changes to the recommendations from the report that initially went forward on June 23rd. So we actually have a new report coming forward on September 26th. So we're hoping that council is amenable to revising this agenda and then accepting the report on September 26th, Planning and Development Committee.
So defer.
So through you, Mr. Chair, there's two options. Committee could defer to the September 26th meeting, 10.1 and correspondence 10.2, or committee could receive this report with the understanding that there is a new report coming on September 26th with some new recommendations.
Might as well just wait for it.
Yeah, so I got a deferral from Councillor Fortini. I think that's probably more appropriate. So deferral by Councillor Fortini. Anyone opposed? I see none. The motion carries.
And just to clarify, that's 10.1 and 10.2.
10.1 and 10.2, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is just councillor question period, item 12.
Are there any questions from members of the committee? I see none. Public question period. Are there any questions from members of the public?
Mr. Chair, just bear with me. I'm going to look. There are none.
Okay, so our last item.
Oh, sorry, there is somebody in the audience that has a question.
Okay.
If you can come down to the microphone, please, and you'll identify yourself for the meeting record. And it has to be a question in regard to a recommendation that the planning committee has dealt with tonight.
Is it concerning the housing capital project?
Yes, that was on the agenda, yeah.
Yes.
Please come forward.
Is this a small question?
So if you can just state your name for the record, please.
I am Bogdan Marcinyuk. I am asking a question concerning the house project. I'm just asking in terms of as to where this project would be situated, because the presenter showed the location or pictures of the location, but I did not catch exactly where.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I don't know if Madhu or Andrew, if you can speak to some of the locations. I believe the slides that you presented and the report speaks to a number of different locations across the city that the Housing Catalyst program would apply to.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. And through the chair, could I ask Madhu to kindly speak to that? I don't know if you can pull up the slides again.
Yeah, hi there. The first proposal actually has a site which is in 51-3 secondary plan, Mount Pleasant secondary plan area. And it is one of the sites owned by Argo Developments. And the second slide is that's the first slide. Yeah, if we just go back. Yeah, the next one, please. Yes, so that is the site for the first proposal in 51-3, ward number 6, Mount Pleasant Secondary Plan Area. And the second slide, the second proposal from GAVE, Golden Age Village for the Elderly. That's the next slide. Please go back to the earlier slide, please. The second, go back. One more slide up. Yes. So it is at 8950 McLaughlin Road South in ward number 5. And the third proposal by Sheridan College along with Algoma University. So they are doing a student needs assessment, and eventually it is intended to do some student housing in their campus and in other sites throughout the city. The fourth proposal by Indus and the 4 non-profit agencies. They haven't identified a site yet, but they are looking for sites in major transit station areas. And once they get a site, the funding will be dispersed to them.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm good.
and thank you. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to contact our staff. And this presentation is public as well, right? Okay, great. So our final item is adjournment, moved by Councilor Fortini. Our next scheduled meeting is September 26th. Is there anyone opposed? I see none. Motion carries. Have everyone a good night. Thank you to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.